Welcome to Change Happened, Then What? Where each week in Season 1 of the Friendship Chronicles, I share real-life stories from incredible people I've met over the past 20 plus years. Stories of change, challenge, and what comes next. These are the moments that shaped them, the pivots that led to purpose, and the raw emotions in between. My hope is that these conversations inspire you, offer hope, and in the end, leave you with a smile. So, wherever you are, take a deep breath and let's dive in, because change happens, and that's where the story really begins. I'm your host, Heather Holt, and I'm so happy to have you here today. Hey friends, before we dive in, just a quick reminder, if you haven't filled out the listener survey yet for your chance to win a Change Happened trucker hat, there's still time. Your feedback means the world to me, and it's going to help shape the future of this podcast. And honestly, it's like giving me a hug for my heart, and you could win a hug for your head. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can head to my website at www.changehappenedpodcast.com. And I can't wait to hear from you. Now for this week's episode. In today's episode, I'll introduce you to Lalaneya, a woman who gave it all up by trusting her intuition, not just once, but again and again, over the course of years. Through all the learning she's done in this lifetime, and the lessons that arrived wrapped in loss, love, and letting go, she's discovered something sacred. When she releases the house, the business, her husband, even the money, what remains is something deeper and truer, herself. But her journey didn't begin there. It began with healing her heart, and that started with healing her heart with her father.
A huge part of that for sure. And interestingly enough, somewhere along the way, I think it was like a good year leading up to me learning that he had cancer, maybe even 2 years, I was fascinated and drawn to reading books on near-death experiences, and I was watching movies on near-death experiences. But I just found it interesting that it hit me at that point in time. And then I learned about my father being ill, and literally months leading up to it, it was like another intuitive nudge that I received where he was like, come on kids, grab the grandkids, just that, the other thing, and started a fire. And he pulled out this sandwich grilling thing where you'd put peanut butter jelly or whatever sort of toppings you want, and then you close the piece of bread up in this little cast iron sandwich closer and you toast it over the fire. So he had that, and I'm like, wow, something's going on, because that's not normally the way my father is in family functions, during family functions like that. It just struck me as odd, because almost like he was reminiscing, because that's something that we did as children. We'd go camping and boating and all of that. And it was a good time before we moved. That was like August, September. And it was Thanksgiving of that year when we found out that he had cancer. That's when he told all of us. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew something was off. I just knew it, you know? And then he passed away that following year. And I was by his side with everybody else, you know, to kind of full circle the near-death thing. I just witnessed a lot of really interesting, spot-on experiences with him. He was like reliving his life before he died. You know, people usually brush that off as it's the medicine. I certainly didn't at the time. And it was so fascinating. And because I had this new outlook on death, you know, so caring for him, I took a sabbatical from work, was with him. I tried to be there almost every day. You know, we took turns, but, you know, I was the one to help him soak his feet and massage his feet and put lotion, because his he had like edema in his legs, and it was super uncomfortable. And then the day that he died, I was able to witness him take his big breath and then exhale, for his last time. And just before, he had looked off to the right, kind of up and above to my left, and smiled like someone was there to greet him. And it was the most beautiful moment of my life and the most terrifying moment, because that was my last goodbye. Yeah, so, and, I'd like to say that my relationship with him was, from my perspective, tumultuous at times and very complicated, because I kind of had a love-hate. He wasn't my biological dad. He raised me from the time that my mom had married him. I was like a year old, I think, year and a half. And so anyways, I witnessed a lot and was at the hand of a lot. So that I was a child that was very kind of worldly in ways and precarious, and asked a lot of questions and had a lot of fire, and I think it scared him. So he tried to temper that down. As far as reading all of those books, it was so helpful for me to understand that we are more than this body. Yet another avenue helping me to prepare, basically.
Not long after, Lalaneya and her sister would find themselves rescuing their mother from an abusive relationship and moving her into their homes. All while Lalaneya was fighting to keep her marriage intact, their businesses afloat, and her children happy. And right in the middle of all of that chaos, she was having a spiritual awakening, learning more and more about herself and what truly made her soul come alive.
My sister and I, we basically abducted, is what I say, my mom from Texas, from her last husband. We contacted like the local police first, and they were very familiar with my mom and her husband. There had been moments when she attempted to leave, but it got to a point where she was just a fraction of who she was. And, he wouldn't allow her to talk to us. And when he did, he was right there telling her what to say, telling her what not to say. He got rid of her cell phone. Eventually, she was fired from her job because he would harass her. So, yeah, she came to live with Liam and I for 6 weeks, and then she would go to my sister's for 6 weeks, and we flip-flopped like that. That was for the majority of our marriage. There was a lot of stressors, and I was having physical issues because of it all. A lot of stomach issues, and I had a pulmonary embolism just from the stress of everything. But I also think that there was just a lot of, this is what my soul had planned for me, because it seemed as though every time I had one of these moments, there was always huge aha moment. Whether it came in terms of a dream or just an intuitive, very claircognizant way.
I want to take a moment to explain something for listeners who might not be familiar with the term claircognizance. When people start stepping into the world of trusting their sixth sense, some may call it intuition. There are a few different ways that information can come through. There's clairsentience. That's when you feel the information in your body through emotions, energy shifts, or even physical sensations. There's clairaudience, the ability to hear information, not out loud like you and I are talking right now, but usually in your mind, as a voice that isn't your own and doesn't sound like the way you normally think, so you know it's coming from somewhere else. There's clairvoyance, when visions come through in mental images or symbolic pictures. Clairalliance, the ability to smell something that isn't physically there and has no obvious source. Clairgustance, tasting something that isn't physically in your mouth. Clairtingency, when you can hold on to an object and receive information from it just by touching it. And then there's claircognizance, which is what Lalaneya experiences. The ability to just know something without any logical explanation. People often call this their gut feeling without realizing there's another word for it. It's that innate ability to know before you have proof or reason. You can't explain why, you just know. And how many times have we said, I wish I had trusted my gut? And as you're going to see here, when Lalaneya stepped into this new way of being, choosing to live from a place of trust, life didn't magically get easier. She was still very much in the thick of it, raising her daughters, paying rent, not just on her home where she lived, but also on the space where she worked. See, by trade, she's a hairstylist. Even with all of her talent and dedication, she found herself standing at a crossroads, grappling with a gut-wrenching decision. Her intuition was quietly but firmly guiding her to close the doors of her beloved salon, the business she built with her own hands, and go work for someone else just to keep providing for her family. It wasn't just a career shift. It was another surrender.
Really what led up to all of that is knowing that I can't think about the whole picture or I'm going to stress myself out. So little by little, it just got to the point where I was getting so far in debt that it was backing up on me. So it was no longer like having a problem with paying rent at home. It was, I am having a tough time paying rent at the salon space now. What am I going to do? And I was so resistant as, to get another job or to work in another salon because I just wanted things to be the way that they were. And I couldn't see any further beyond my nose, basically. So, yeah, it was just like the intuiting, and it was led by little nudges. First I'd get an email from the person that I was leasing the space from, and I had to respond to that. And I felt the pressure. And so one thing about me, once I start feeling the pressure, that's when I start, okay, I got to do something. I can't just keep sitting here in this fear or sorrow or pity or, or just fawn. They say that you freeze. I did a lot of freezing. So I spent a weekend, did what I do, and got my answer and said, okay, Monday I'm sending an email that I'm going to close up shop. And I did. And then things happened so quickly. The moment I sent the email and I got the response back from him, it literally was like 2 days. I saw an ad for the medical spa, and I was familiar with who he was. He had cut my hair a few times. I had conversations with him a number of times. I jumped on that opportunity. I'm like, I know him. He knows me. I'm going to apply for this. So I did. I applied, and then I heard a little voice in the back of my head saying, go see if he's actually there and just talk to him. So I got up and I left the house at that moment after I sent the application in, stopped in and said, hey, I just applied. And I was literally working that following Wednesday. He hired me. Had the interview the next day. So I did that. And then I ended up kind of same window getting a job renting a chair out of a salon on Dorset Street. It was just absolutely perfect. And so, all of the resistance kind of disappeared and something clicked and boom, everything played its part and fell into place. I started saving the money, making plans with the person that I was leasing from the salon, squared things away with my landlord at home. And then I decided that it wasn't working for me any longer at the medical spa and ended up working at Domino's for a while. And that was like so fun. It's just, when you're so focused on just doing the task at hand, like I felt like I made so much money so quickly to pay off what I needed to pay off, to get me to North Carolina, to rent what I needed to rent in order to pack and move. I wanted a hitch and ball on my truck for the longest time, and I was able to do that finally so that I could move. And it just everything in such a short window of time happened. It felt like magic. It just entirely felt like magic.
Magic? Yes. In the end. Because here's the thing. Lalaneya knew, even before she closed her salon, that a deeper truth had been stirring inside her, one she couldn't ignore. She was meant to leave Vermont. She was meant to move south. But the path to that new beginning couldn't reveal itself until she took that first step. And once she leapt, once she felt willing to let go of everything she knew and trust that inner knowing, things began to fall into place in ways that felt almost effortless. Even if it meant for a little while, her hands weren't in someone's hair, but in dough, sauce, cheese, and plenty of pepperoni.
A car would be flying past us. And I'm like, what are they in a hurry for? Oh my God, they're so crazy. They're going to take our lives. And they pull in front of us, and the license plate is 222, something. And another time, a big truck had, we had passed it, or they passed us, or whatnot, and the number was something 2222. So it's like these were just, I call them angel messages and God winks or nudges that I'm on my path.
These numbers, or God winks, as she calls them, are her reminders that she's exactly where she's meant to be, little signs that she's still on the right path. And now that she's down south, she's found a job working at a salt cave. When the owner casually mentions a number that she needs to know, it's just another one of those winks that whispers, "You're in the right spot, Lalaneya." I then ask her about one of the biggest lessons she's learned in life, and she answers without hesitation, trust. I imagine that with each loss, each time she's let go, each leap of faith, she's learned a little more of it. Not your everyday kind of trust, but the kind that lives deep in your gut, the kind that whispers, even when the world is shouting, the kind that says, "You already know, keep going." Trusting her intuition, trusting herself above all else.
And one of my big life lessons is trust, learning to trust in general, whatever it is. There's that, and I've been learning a lot about who I used to be, like the untouched parts of you before you go to school, before you experience family, before, I just remember all of these moments as a child where I was so connected to nature and the things that I did, climbing trees and whatever, and then I had lost all of that. And I'm coming back to all of that and remembering all of this. And that's one of the things that I want to do with people in general, is teach them how to heal their inner child, which is what I've been doing all along.
And now, from that grounded place of knowing, Lalaneya offers others the chance to reconnect with their own inner compass. She's turned her path into practice, offering energy clearings, because in learning to trust herself, she's found a way to help others do the same.
I practice Reiki and somatic Balinese healing. I'm also bringing in some crystal bowls, and I have brass bowls and chimes. I just keep getting pulled over into the energy healing as a whole. The people that come to me, they're always very much aligned. They have some sort of similar story or similarity with like my whole path and where I've come from and where I am now.
If you have listened to past episodes, you have heard me talk about Reiki and how it works. However, somatic Balinese healing is a body-based approach that helps release stored trauma and reconnects people to their intuition through touch, presence, and nervous system awareness. This is a modality that she was taught by one of her mentors, Candace Silvers. I will put links in the show notes about Candace and all of Lalaneya's mentors, as well as a link to Lalaneya's website, courageousheartspace.com. Lalaneya now works with clients in a way that is deeply personal and intuitive, meeting them exactly where they are. She helps people come back to themselves, releasing what no longer serves them, and creating space for something softer, more true. Her sessions aren't about fixing. They're about feeling, reconnecting, and trusting what the body already knows. As we wrap up our conversation, I ask her those final 2 questions. First, what makes you smile these days? Her answer is simple and grounded, just as she is now.
I'd see the beauty in life. I've just seen the magic that little God winks.
Little God winks make me smile too. So before we go, I ask her that final question. If you could offer one piece of advice to anyone listening today, what would it be?
Remember to speak to your inner child. Remember who you once were and love that person.
Remember to speak to your inner child and love that person. Wise advice. Because I think in this world, it's easy to forget that everyone is walking through something. And sometimes the hurt that people carry goes all the way back to a version of themselves that never got a chance to heal. If we can pause for a moment and bring ourselves back to our own childhood, whether those memories are light or heavy, we can start to see others and even ourselves in a softer way. We can then remember at our core, we are still that child. And maybe, just maybe, we can offer them the love and understanding they've been waiting for all along. I hope today's episode brought you hope, inspiration, or even just a moment of peace. If you found value in what you heard, please share this episode with someone who needs it. And don't forget to follow the podcast or leave a 5-star review. It makes a bigger difference than you might realize. Your support helps others find the show and keeps these stories reaching the people who need them most. You'll find links in the show notes for all the resources mentioned in today's episode, as well as the link to our website, changehappenedpodcast.com. There you can learn more about our guests, sign up for our newsletter, and see what's new in the Change Happened world. Change Happened, Then What? Is written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, at Holt Hill Studios, with the enthusiastic support of my 2 sidekicks, Waylon and Dalton. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep smiling.
There's always a reason to always choose joy. There's something deeper that the world can't destroy. Smile when you think you can't. Smile, get up and dance. Smile, there's a bigger plan. The storm only lasts for a while. So smile.